Namaskar and a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, Pondicherry Regional Center, and the Department of History, Pondicherry University, we welcome you all, and we are celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of Bharat Kesari Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. This is an initiative by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and this celebration is being done in Delhi and other regional centers of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and also by other institutions. I warmly welcome you on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, Pondicherry Regional Center, and on behalf of the Department of History, Pondicherry University. This gives me immense pleasure to commemorate the life of one of the greatest sons of our mother India, Bharat Kesari, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, who was born in Bengal, but his vision was always towards the world, towards the idea of unified Akhand Bharat, and he has dedicated his entire life for this noble cause, like we saw in the film. So I will not spend much word about the life of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, because we have our distinguished speakers. They will throw immense light on the life and the legacy of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. In this series, I would first invite Sri Mahati Prasad Ji, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, to say a few words.
Respected Vice Chancellor, Dr. Chauhan, Dr. Nand Kishore, and Professor Chetamboli, members of the faculty of Pondicherry University, and the students who are here. It's of course a great pleasure for me to be amongst you. And today is the 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. And the best thing that we can do is to recall the service that he had rendered to our nation. There was an ideal that he set forth for himself quite early in his life. When he was about 15 years old or so, he had written to Professor Percival that all that he wants is to lead a pure and noble life. He had that sense of purity because he never deviated from the ideal of what he felt to be right. And it was noble because there was always a courage with which he expressed it, even if he had to bear the burden of being a dissenter among the majority. Of course, in this he had a very great example from his father. Sir Ashutosh Mookerjee, his father, one of the formidable personalities of that time, he was invited by Lord Curzon to be at the coronation of Edward VII. Sir Ashutosh Mookerjee actually agreed, but he said that I have to take my mother's permission. Now the mother was a person who at that time, had the habits of persons of that time, and she declined. Sir Ashutosh Mookerjee had to tell the Viceroy that I am refusing the invitation to go to the coronation of Edward VII. Lord Curzon wrote to him, "Tell your mother that the Viceroy of India is ordering Sir Ashutosh Mookerjee to go for the coronation to Britain." Sir Ashutosh Mookerjee wrote back, "On behalf of the mother of Ashutosh Mookerjee, she would like to reply to you that her son takes command from nobody, be it the Viceroy or anybody above it. This was the type of environment in which he grew up. Of course, we know about his distinguished career, how he was Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, how he promoted the regional identities, while at the same time perceiving the university to be like a window that opens you to the outside world and allows the outside world to come in. I think it was he who started the Department of Agriculture, so studying the modern agriculture practices in Calcutta University. A great person is one who always wears the mantle of greatness a little lightly. And one of the characteristic of a person who wears the mantle lightly is a sense of humor. And something that I remember, he was in the opposition, and one of the members taunted him, "But you must face the truth." He was in the opposition, of course. Pat came the reply, "You are not allowing me. The treasury bench is in front of me." So this is something which shows a lightness of the personality, the greatness with which you can turn the situation to any kind of a perception. I am reminded of a sentence from Okakura. Those who fail to see the littleness of the greatness in themselves are not likely to see the greatness in the littleness of others. This is something which was characteristic of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, that the sense of feeling one with the ordinary man. We know that he had a touch, he had a connection with Pondicherry. In fact, his younger brother, Prasad Mookerjee, was a frequent visitor to Pondicherry in the year 1970s, 80s. He was a very interesting personality. Every year, he would just disappear into the Himalayas. Of course, Himalayas of those time, when it was uncorrupted by progressive, I may say. And each year, he would write a book on those travels. Syama Prasad Mookerjee himself came here, and the mother had invited him to preside over the convention, to start the Center of Education at Sri Aurobindo Ashram. And I'm reminded of a sentence which is actually not of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, but which expresses what I feel he would have wanted a university to be. It was in a speech given at the end of the year for the students. It was said, "A university is a place where one enters a raw youth, but leaves it a man and a gentleman." If we can do that, we would have fulfilled the dream of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, and that would be our homage to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really enlightening. Now I would request Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, Professor Prakash Babu sir, to say a few words.
Very good morning, all of you. The guests on the dais. So, Dr. Sharad Chauhan, Chief Secretary, Government of Pondicherry. Shri Matri Prasad from Aurobindo. And my colleague, keynote speaker, Dr. Nandakishore. And one of the co-organizers, Dr. Sumit Dev, Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts. My another colleague sitting on the dais, Dr. Chandramouli, head of the department, and my other colleagues sitting in the audience, Professor Mohanty and other colleagues are here, students and dear friends. It's a great honor and privilege to be part of today's occasion. When I met accidentally Dr. Sumit in the airport, so we had a long discussion. We got a chance to interact with each other know each other, and he explained what all he has been doing it in Pondicherry. And he said he's also having the close association with the Pondicherry University, and he wanted to involve in many more activities. That time itself, he indicated that he is going to have one program with the Department of History on this Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's workshop and the exhibition. And Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee is it's a visionary leader and a true patriot of the country, nation. And unfortunately, he died maybe at the age of 52 only. It's very young, very young. Actually, that is the age actually people will start working because they accumulate the knowledge. But the earlier speaker has indicated how systematically and sincerely dedicated to the country. So, his significant contribution to the field of education is the most important. Since we are in the university system, let us talk despite he has all his credentials, let us concentrate on the education system. Though he was a prominent politician and the founder of the Bharatiya Janasangh, but also renowned academician and a education reform. He's an education reformer, and he completed his education in India and went to study the law at Lincoln's Inn in London, becoming one of the youngest Indian barristers of the time. His most notable education role was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Calcutta. So he became Vice Chancellor at the age of 33. The youngest Vice Chancellor ever India has even today. So he's in the records now, and he served the university. During that time itself, he made a lot of reforms. He was given a thought actually. During his tenure, he introduced the significant reforms aimed at the modernizing the university system. Nobody thought of actually that time. Pre-independent era, later we are discussing about pre-independent era. He emphasized the need for the scientific research. So, though he is such a visionary that scientific research is very much essential to take the nation to the next level or on par with the countries which are actually developed countries those days. So, technical education he proposed. Now, we are talking about the technical education, skill India, skill education and all, including into the NEP. So now, but he spoke all these things about in 1934 itself, in 1934 when he was the Vice Chancellor. And the industrialization of the curriculum. So now we are talking about the industry academia collaboration, and we have to work together and take the students should go to the industry so that they should get an exposure and all. He talks about all these things in 1934 itself. So can you believe how much visionary he is in the education system? And he actively supported the inclusion of Indian languages and the culture. So this is we have been missed during the erstwhile era of the colonial rule. So now he talks about that because he realized that this is going to be a threat for the Indian culture. He proposed and also promoted the Indian culture during those days itself. And he also worked to improve the access for the marginalized communities. He also inclusive education he started during those days. And I saw one of the photographs with the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar where he was also talking about the inclusive education and upliftment of the marginalized. So can anybody thought of that those days? So he is the one among the persons who is a visionary. That's why people say that is not only patriot but is a visionary of the Indian education system or the future of the young people of the India. Dr. Mookerjee firmly believed that education was the foundation of the strong nation. As India was still under colonial rule at that time, he encouraged the academic freedom and critical thinking. So those days actually we don't have freedom. So, but he proposed and promised to the university students that you should do that one. And also, he played a pivotal role in laying the groundwork for the technical and industrial education, understanding that the newly independent nation needed the skilled manpower Even today we are talking about the lack of the skilled manpower and we are promoting. So those days itself, so industrialization is imminent to take the Bharat into the next level and also to provide the employment, to provide the bread and butter to all the people. He proposed that one industrial education or industrialization or skill education is a important component of this manpower to grow. Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's a legacy in education is a visionary, reformist, and also his dedication to the country or the education. He combined the academic excellence with the deep sense of national service. These are the two important aspects. So, deep sense of national service is an important one, and his efforts to continue to inspire the generation of the students and education across the India even today. Another important aspect of this one, I think science students, if they are here, they will understand. There's a Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee Fellowship. SP is called as SPM Fellowship. So to consider, because he was the first vice president of the CSIR, first vice president of the CS Center for the Council of Industrial Research, is one of the important scientific bodies that is in the country. So he was the first vice president. On his name, they started a fellowship. That fellowship is the toppest fellowship. The top 5% or the top 50 students are being given this particular fellowship. It's around 75,000 rupees for the student. And also 70,000 rupees for the student contingency per year. And after 2-3 years, it will be elevated again. So these are things. And also with a rider. So because everything once comes cheap, freely, people should not think that they can take it granted. But the fellowship condition is, if somebody is not performing well, they can downgrade it also. So everything, anything freely comes with a responsibility, and people should understand the responsibility. So see, this is on his name. Still, this SPM fellowship is going on, and students are immensely benefited. Especially the research people are working for the industrial promotion of this one. So these are the important aspects of the Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, and it's a very great honor to remember his acts and his legacy. And I wish that all the people, students especially here, to take the torch of the Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee in future. So thank you for the opportunity. So Dr. Dev, I wish many more here in this university.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind support and bringing out the Syama Prasad Mookerjee as an academic among the students. So that might have enlightened our students and as much as us as well. So without much ado, I would now request our chief guest for this occasion, Dr. Sarath Chauhan, Chief Secretary to the Government of Pondicherry, to say his insightful words.
Thank you so much to Sumit Deji, our Master of Ceremonies, Vice Chancellor Sahab of Pondicherry University, the HOD of the Department of History and Chair of this session, Professor Chandramouli, Professor Nand Kishore of the Department of International Relations, if I have got it right, my good friend Prasad ji from the Sri Aurobindo Society, the faculty and students of the Department of History, and if there are some of you present here from the other departments of the social sciences, invitees, participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to be here, VC Sahab, and to be of any help that we can do for the Pondicherry University and for all the good work that you've been doing in the short time that you've been here. So to the students and faculty of the Pondicherry University, what a wonderful campus you have here. Makes one wish to enroll again each time one visits. A very good morning to all. We are fortunate to be living here in Puducherry, but let me convey to, if there are outsiders here, to our guests, although there are no outsiders within this great nation of ours, but I'm just saying this in the context of Puducherry. So to our guests in Puducherry, greetings from the people and government of Puducherry, the ancient Vedpuri, ashram of Agastya Rishi, bhumi of Siddha Purushas, and my place of retreat, my cave of tapasya, in the words of Sri Aurobindo. At the outset, I would like to sincerely congratulate Thiru Sumit Deji, Regional Director of IGNCA, for organizing the Bharat Kesari Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee Memorial event, which, as I understand, would comprise of a 3-day exhibition and a special lecture in remembrance of the life and legacy of one of India's greatest sons and heroes, and also his special connection with Puducherry, the karma bhumi of and spiritual home to another one of its great sons. As all of you may be aware, the Ministry of Culture is honoring Bharat Kesari Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's life and contributions both to the nation and the development of the national ethos through various commemorative programs, and our compliments are due to the Department of History and to IGNCA for this initiative, which will add to celebrating Dr. Mookerjee's lasting impact on India's cultural and civilizational identity, as well as modern Indian politics, education and industry. And I'm very thankful to Mati Prasad for some very wonderful stories of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, and to the Vice Chancellor Sahab for detailing his academic achievements. For the context of Puducherry, as was mentioned by Mati Prasad, this is particularly important and noteworthy, since the mother had invited Dr. Mookerjee to deliver the convocation address at the Golden Jubilee celebration of Sri Aurobindo Memorial Convention, which was held in Puducherry in April 1951. Friends, we have just seen in the exhibition, he was born in a very illustrious family in 1901 in Kolkata, very highly respected academic and judicial family. And he rose to become one of India's prominent sons, making lasting contributions in the areas of education, national integration, and playing a key role in the economic and political development of the country. He was a brilliant student from the beginning, as we have seen, and what an achiever, earning not only degrees in English literature and law, but BA first class first in English honors, and then MA first class first in Bengali literature and language. And of course, as was mentioned by Vice Chancellor Sahab, youngest Vice Chancellor ever in the history of the country, and that too of the University of Kolkata at that time. But it's not just for his academic excellence that we define and know him. It is also for his deep love for the nation and commitment to India's progress. So let me recount some snippets from his immense contributions. For instance, let's take the reforms in education. We've just heard he was Vice Chancellor of the Calcutta University from 1934 to 1938. Working to modernize education, yes. Introducing new disciplines, encouraging Indian language studies, Maithili, Hindi, Telugu, Gujarati, Tamil, Assamese, promoting scientific research, and his belief that education should not only create professionals but also build character and national pride has actually laid the groundwork for a more self-reliant and intellectually strong India. If you see his role in national integration, so among the most defining of his contributions was his firm stand on national unity, especially concerning the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So after independence, he advocated its complete and full integration of the province of Jammu and Kashmir, and strongly opposed the special status given to Kashmir under Article 370, arguing that there should be one nation, one constitution. And he had undertaken the journey to Kashmir to protest against the permit system which was in vogue at that time in 1953. For his political and economic vision, we can look to his service in the first cabinet of the country as Minister for Industry and Supply from 1947 to 1950, So he worked on the foundations of the industrialization of the country, including India's first industrial policy, setting up of public sector enterprises, and encouraging Indian entrepreneurship. At the same time, balancing this economic nationalism, which is like aimed at both industrial growth through technology imports and promoting self-reliance. As we can see, Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee's life was incredibly impactful. He stood for courage, conviction, and commitment to national unity, and his contributions to education, political thought, and national integration remain invaluable. So, friends, like adding to the stories, I would like to recount one well-known incident which shows us his leadership and progressive vision. And this is from the time when he became Vice Chancellor of the Calcutta University. He invited Guru Rabindranath Tagore to speak at the university, which was a surprisingly bold move at that time. By he was his own academic council. When they asked him why, because Tagore at that time was very critical of formal education systems. So Dr. Mookerjee, during the event, in the presence of Guru Tagore, said a university must not fear new thought. It must encourage dialogue even if it challenges the very system we are part of. This act and statement of his reflects his vision, and I am now quoting him, in that education is not just about literacy or degrees. It's about character, conviction, and the courage to think independently. Unquote. In fact, we can be in no doubt that he was a visionary with foresight in all areas, since another belief of his finds reflection in the Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat campaigns that we see. I mean, these are our policy pillars and programs of today. And I quote, "We must not become dependent on foreign capitals or imports. India must learn to stand on her own industrial feet." Unquote. During his address at the convocation address at the Golden Jubilee, and yes, incidentally, in Calcutta University, he delivered a convocation address in Bangla in 1937, which was the first ever Indian language convocation university at a university. So at this Golden Jubilee celebration of Sri Aurobindo Memorial Convention, which was held in Pondicherry in April 1951, he emphasized the need for a university inspired by Sri Aurobindo's ideals, speaking of establishing a center which would be not only the fittest memorial to Sri Aurobindo, but would, under the guidance and inspiration of the mother, develop into a rejuvenating force for the entire human civilization. Unquote. And this can be linked to what he had said on an earlier occasion about Sri Aurobindo in the previous year, 1950. With the same abandon with which he had struggled for India's political freedom, he began his long, patient quest for the freedom of the spirit. The two Aurobindos merged with each other, the political fighter and the yogi. Even then, his earlier patriotism was tinged with a spiritual penumbra. He was thus a true Indian. And the same can be unhesitatingly said of Bharat Kesari, Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee, that he was a true Indian. In the end, I would like to end by quoting the Honorable Prime Minister when he paid heartfelt tributes to Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee on the occasion of his birth anniversary. Remembering the immense contributions of Dr. Mookerjee, Honorable PM said that he sacrificed his life to protect the honor, dignity, and pride of the country. His ideals and principles are invaluable in the construction of a developed and self-reliant India. Unquote. I thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule and delineating the life of Bharat Keshari Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee in such beautiful words, putting together anecdotes from different aspects of his life, academic, administrative, as well as a visionary leader. Thank you very much. I think with this we conclude the inaugural session, and now we move to the next part of the program, which is the special lecture keynotes speaker. And we have with us Professor Nandakishore MS, who is currently the head of the Department of the International Relations and Political Science of Pondicherry University. And I would request to Professor Chandramouli, the head of the Department of History, to chair this session. So before we begin that, I request my colleague Sushmita to we will felicitate the speaker as well as the chair for this session.
Namaskar. A very warm good morning to all of you. Chief guest of today's function, the Chief Secretary of the Government of Pondicherry, Chauhanji, our esteemed Vice Chancellor, Professor Prakash Babu, the head of Aurobindo Society, Sri Matri Prasad ji, my friend and colleague, Dr. Nandakishore, my colleagues in the department, Professor Venugopal, Dr. Roman Banerjee, Dr. Hokip, and colleagues from sister disciplines, the in-charge dean, Professor Mohanty, my friend Pradeep Kumar, Dr. Shantishri, and Dr. And friends, my dear students, scholars, and friends. And I feel happy to be part of this wonderful event today, celebrating the greatest sons of the soil, Syama Prasad Mookerjee ji, under the auspices of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. And I thank Dr. Sumit for being with us in conducting this event. He and his colleagues of this small center of the regional center in Pondicherry have been working day in and day out for the last 1 week or more in working out the logistics, and today it is happening here, and it went off so very well. And with the gracious presence of the Chief Secretary and Professor Prakash Babu Garu, our Vice Chancellor, this event was indeed a very enriching one, providing wonderful glimpses of the life of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, who is a true son of the soil, whose mind, thoughts, acts, everything were Indian, and a true citizen of Bharat. And I take this opportunity to invite Dr. Nandakishore to deliver this special lecture commemorating this celebration of the 125th birth anniversary of Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Dr. Nandakishore.
Good morning all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Chief Secretary of Pondicherry, Matri Prasad ji, whom I have known for a while, and Professor Chandramouli, and all the colleagues and students, scholars assembled here. My special thanks also goes to Mr. Sumit, because I think they both, perhaps my Vice Chancellor and Dr. Sumit, both are responsible for this occasion itself. Though accidentally they met, it ended up, because generally they say there is a thesis, antithesis, and then there is a synthesis. I think the synthesis happened at the university. From nowhere, it all ended up as a confluence and ended up here on the campus, and I happen to be delivering this particular lecture. I deem it as a great responsibility and an honor to do this. Now, the very thought is that some of these individuals, I wish perhaps Indira Gandhi Center would continue to hold a series of lectures on leaders, or those are forgotten, or those leaders who are less celebrated. Perhaps that can be a series, and Department of History can be a facilitator for this whole process itself. For the simple reason, because India is at the cusp of moving from a norm taker to a norm giver. You know, that's exactly what we were in the past, and that's exactly what we are becoming now. And as the famous say in the Vedas go, ano badraha kratavo yantu vishvataha. It simply says, let the noble thoughts come. And India will not boost itself or present itself as something that knows everything, but at the same time as a humble, civilizationally rooted, culturally, vibrant country that can be of help to those, because nowhere in the history we have seen a scenario where people from the East have gone in search of spirituality, in search of things that are beyond the materialistic life to the Western part of the world. It's always been the other way around. They might be materially stronger, they might be wealthier, they might be having other things that matter in day-to-day life, but some things that people still long, whether it is Steve Jobs or anybody for that matter, all of them at one point of time have sought to come back to this land that's the land of spirituality, and that's a land that has given peace to a number of people. Now, having said that, it's the context in which we are talking about is much important here, where the importance of national vision, civilizational rootedness, and the moral leadership that's being debated across the world. The type of leadership that we have in different parts of the world, and what type of leadership is anticipated, because this is called as the principal agent problem even in politics. What we anticipate and vote and what we get in outcome. This has been an issue across the world, and the type of leadership that we're imagining perhaps is not there. It is in this context, I see the legacy of Syama Prasad Mookerjee not just as an exercise of historical reflection, but also a re-engagement with the ideas that remain urgently relevant. Now, his life, as was spoken by the people on the dais, they showed certain dimensions to his life. There is much more to his life and much more relevance to why we need to perhaps take many of these leaders. At no point of time we will ever claim that the only leader is important. I think that's not the way our country has ever functioned. It has always been that it has taken number of ideas. It has also made sure that number of things have all been taken and then they are brought in together. Now, in this next 15-20 minutes that I'm going to talk about, it's been structured in a way that first I'll be talking about a pioneering role in the Indian education and institution building. Second is his political vision that gave birth to what we call as the Bharatiya Janasangh, an ideological predecessor to what we see today, the Bharatiya Janata Party. And the third is unflinching stand on national unity, especially concerning Jammu and Kashmir. That was much more important. And at the fourth level, the lesser documented but deeply symbolic episode of the 1951, that visit to Pondicherry. That's much more important because there is some sort of a connection between Bengal and Pondicherry. That's how we got Sri Aurobindo, that's how we have got Syama Prasad Mookerjee, and number of them have found their root here. And that's one of the reasons you will see number of people, whether it is at the Auroville or at the ashram or everywhere, invariably you will end up coming across one or the other one. And it also happens to be another coincidence. We have even Sumit being here. You know, that connection is something that we are surprised, but I think there is maybe some sort of a spiritual energy that runs around. Now, Dr. Syama Prasad's life itself invites us to think beyond binaries. That's exactly what is important because we live in the world of binaries on many occasions. Now, he stood at the crossroads of East and West, tradition and modernity, politics and philosophy, action and contemplation. Now, in his own words, he says, the future of India depends not on slogans, but on integrity, courage and national unity. This is from the collected works of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, which is in volume 2, page number 58. Now, just having a simple look at his life, Dr. Ambedkar says that life should not be long, but it should be great. You know, his was an exemplary example of such a type of life in such short span, what all he did. Some of the things were spoken about, where he went on to do a BA in Honours in English, MA from the University of Calcutta, then BL in Law and the Bar from the Lincoln's Inn in London, then went on to become the Vice Chancellor, which was spoken again, entered into Bengal Legislative Assembly as an independent candidate, joined the Hindu Mahasabha, became working president by the 1940, born in 1901, and by 1940 is already there in some of the important positions. 41 to 42, he served actually also as a finance minister of the then government under Fazul Huq's government itself, but he had his own differences with the Muslim League and subsequently moved out. And then we saw in the video, we saw the Bengal famine and the type of issues that happened. Then he also opposed the Muslim League's direct action at one point of time, that was in the 1946 and 47. He also advocated the partition of Bengal, where the securing Hindu majority districts into India itself. That was an idea that he pushed forward. 47 to 50, he served as a minister, which was also spoken about. And 50, he resigned from Nehru's cabinet. One of the bright minds from his cabinet was disappointed with the Liaquat-Nehru pact that he felt was disproportionate. And by the 51, he actually found the Bharatiya Janata Sangh, which is the ideological background of what we see today's Bharatiya Janata Party. And in 51, that's a year after Sri Aurobindo's demise, he was invited here to be part of the Aurobindo International Center for Education, where he delivered the convocation address. Then 53, he was arrested in Kashmir for protesting against Article 370. Perhaps that's one of the logical ways of paying tribute to Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. That's exactly what the Prime Minister did so. And he also protested against the very permit system by saying that cannot happen. And then the 23rd of June, 1953, he died in detention under certain mysterious circumstances because the weather to everything became very, very problematic. Now, I'm not spending much time on the earlier part of his life because that was already spoken by the predecessors already here. His interest was essentially, even as a Vice Chancellor, was marked by what we call as several forward-looking reforms. By then, to imagine a system where bringing other disciplines itself was not considered as as an accepted norm, or even as something that went beyond the British pedagogy, because they expected it to fall in line where Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee thought studying Indian philosophy, Sanskrit, Bengali, and even comparative religion as a very, very important component that he had to bring in. For that time, this was considered to be exemplarily progressive. And he also saw to it that there was possibility to bring in science and commerce faculties as well. These two disciplines, something he felt very important that it had to contribute. Apart from this, he also brought in the women's education, which is important. So he says, education is not just a means of livelihood, but a mission to serve the nation. This was his convocation address in the University of Calcutta in 1939. Now, this particular powerful statement that he makes, or that he made at that particular point of time, is important because he often reminded the students of the fact that intellectual achievement that is divorced from the moral responsibility was always hollow, and that would not serve any purpose. This is exactly what he was talking, and he believed that the youth had a critical role in India's march towards what we call as freedom, not merely by agitation, but preparing themselves as ethical and committed citizens. That's the Indianness that we see, which is rooted in spirituality, which is rooted in also ethical values that is enshrined in the lives of individuals, not something that's been borrowed from elsewhere. Now, one of his boldest moves that was spoken by the Chief Secretary of bringing Rabindranath Tagore, and very interestingly, Tagore also spoke about and recognized the interdisciplinary component in learning, wherein he was engaging with international scholars and bringing in the Indian perspective in the academia. That's very important. When we say it has to be rooted in the Indianness, it doesn't mean that we hate something else from elsewhere. As we say, that would go against the very ethos on which the whole civilization is built. Because the civilization has always been open to learning. It has always been open to bringing any sort of idea that came in for individual life. Because he, as was also mentioned, that he was exemplarily interested in vernacular medium of instruction itself, which is also the core idea that has been put into practice in the National Education Policy 2020. Now, the grounding that he had with the foundation of the political journey that he embarked upon, unlike many other, he saw education as a primary tool for the nation building itself, because without that, he thought we will not be able to find a direction, because we will then only be the followers. we will only be listening to someone without fact checking, without actually verifying what we are following or what we have been asked to follow. That has been his interest. Now, he said very, very clearly that spiritual education and cultural rootedness was central to India's national destiny itself, because the scholarly temperament of an education or educationist and the passionate resolve of nation building can happen only when we are educated. And that education is, if that is not being provided by the education, then perhaps we are misled and we are actually moving the other way ahead. He also believed and said that India's strength must arise not from borrowed ideals, but from the cultivated wisdom of her own soil. This is what he was telling. You don't need a borrowed idea from elsewhere and then experiment. Many occasions it's happened so. It might be something that works there and it has been specifically tailor-made, or it is for a particular context, but that if we take without rational way of looking at it and then we impose on something else, perhaps it would not bring the value that we are anticipating. His entry into active politics itself has a reason, because being an educationist and also hailing from illustrious family, perhaps he should have been leading a very peaceful life. He should have been enjoying what he has and all the wealth and the comfort that he had. But somewhere he thought that without entering into politics, you will not be able to influence public policy. If you have to influence public policy, then you yourself have to be a policy maker. And to be a policy maker, and politics was considered as the instrument at that particular point of time, which many did not dare to enter, but Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee did so. That's how he started off as an independent thinker and an independent candidate to the Legislative Assembly. Then he also thought that you need to borrow, you need to have larger organization that perhaps will join hands with him, and he need not start as an individual and then bring number of people to and then come up as an organization. That's how he went to Hindu Mahasabha, then subsequently built upon whatever he thought was very important, because his answer to Muslim League's communal politics was that somewhere he felt that it was going against the affirmation of India's civilizational integrity. And if that were to happen, the aggressive demand for, or the communal demand for the partition was not something that he would withstand. Now, even the coalition government that was there with the Krishik Praja Party and then subsequent issue that he had with the direct action campaign itself, he took a very, very bold stand against the growing appeasement of the Muslim League and also warned the British that the Congress should not be doing this one, and no longer it's anymore a distance threat, but rather it's an imminent reality. And that's the reason he rejected the very idea of the two-nation theory, and he described it as a digger in the heart of India's unity, because he believed that the idea of dividing a millennia-old civilization on religious lines was not only irrational, but also historically and morally indefensible. This is exactly what he said. I quote, he says, "A united India must be united in the souls, not just in maps." This is exactly what he said. This is also again from the collected works of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Now, when India became independent in 47, unlike others who also spoke about unity and many other things, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, as a key architect of India's early industrial policy, said, essentially that was also something that was emphasized by the previous speakers, about self-reliance, indigenous enterprise, and also balanced regional development. That perhaps is an answer to the uneven balancing that happened with regard to India's, let's say, cooperative federalism, which is also equally important, where public sector units were concentrated in only few places, but did not go across, and subsequently the feeling of stepmotherly attitude and everything that we're seeing today with regard to federalism was something that Dr. Syama Prasad already had anticipated, and that's precisely how he wanted it to be spread across, and that's the outcome he had in terms of the National Industrial Development Corporation and also the Industrial Finance Corporations, which are backbone of the country's economic policy itself. Now, however, Dr. Mookerjee's relationship with Nehru-led governments soon got strained, that we saw already. It was also seen as a diplomatic failure and a moral compromise. That's exactly how Dr. Mookerjee felt at this particular point of time. And the act of resignation that he did had an antecedent to that one, and it was essentially a moral declaration. He felt somehow that we had become morally corrupt, and when we cannot stand to certain things that are morally right, then perhaps we should not be even holding positions. That's the position that he took at that particular point of time. He felt that if we are unable to combine cultural nationalism, economic self-reliance, and democratic governance, perhaps then we are going in a different path. That's the only thing that you can see the difference between the Indian right and the right in the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, when we say far right or a right political parties, they generally are economically conservative, politically also they're conservative. But with regard to the Indian right, because the foundation was from Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, we are culturally looking inward, okay, but economically we opened up. That is how at times it confuses people that how being a right-wing party, that party is not looking at inward for industrialization and economic policies. With this type of foundation that was given by Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, where he spoke about cultural nationalism, that's the base on which everything will be built, economic self-reliance and the democratic governance. Economic self-reliance was to take help from others if we don't have one, but we had to stay on our own, and then that's the foundation we see for what we say as Atmanirbhar Bharat or Make in India campaign that we see today. Now, when we look back at the political legacy of this illustrious son of the soil, we see the image of a man who was both a visionary and a pragmatist. Now, he said, or he believed as well, India's destiny must be shaped by those who loved her unconditionally. I repeat, he says that India's destiny must be shaped by those who love her unconditionally, not by those who negotiated her future with fear and favor. Now, this is very important. He says, those people who fear or favor cannot write the destiny of this country, and that cannot be the case. And we don't, conditionally love our mother. That's the same expression that he brought for the nation itself. And that is precisely why his political legacy, overshadowed though for decades now, has resurfaced. That's why we say that perhaps when there is fire, for only a brief time, the ashes can cover it. But when the real wind blows, that means the thought and their power of thought comes in, it will naturally blow up and the fire starts burning. And that's how his thought has come back and forth to us. And that's where we are all gathered here to celebrate his life. That's something that he said. India is not a contract of convenience, but a sacred trust of history and civilization. And that's the kind of nationalism he lived and died as well for. He did not just live, but he also died for. That's much more important. Now, something was also spoken about his political career when subsequently he saw how nationalist, cultural and ideological alternative had to be built because the Congress system was prolonged, and they also went against the very founder who did not wanted the legacy to be taken from the freedom movement, because he thought that had to be left and new political parties had to start. Subsequently, Mr. Gandhi wasn't there to see that one because his commission's report was also not tabled at that particular point of time. But all said and done, he wanted this nationalist, cultural and ideological alternative which is built on cultural nationalism, which he called also as the Sanskritik Rashtravad, economic self-reliance, that is Swadeshi, which we spoke partially now, and also strong national security, which is Rashtra Suraksha. These were the pillars on which he wanted to build a political party, and that party that also values what we call as dharma, that is ethical duty, spiritual pluralism, and the unity in diversity. This is also the other pillar on which he wanted to build the political party itself. Because for him, compromising on national security was something that he would never ever agree to do so. And that's how Article 370 became problematic, which was also witnessed in the documentary that we had in the beginning, Ek Desh Mein Do Vidhan, Do Pradhan, Do Nishan, Nahi chalega, nahi chalega. This was a slogan that in one country, 2 constitutions, 2 prime ministers and 2 flags, this will not do, this will not do. This is exactly what he said, and that became the most important slogan to come back and forth in the later stages of India's political standards itself. Now, he also worked tirelessly to ensure that nationalism would not be monopolized by a single political party, but would become a competitive ideological space. But unfortunately, as we spoke about, and the timelines and other things, it ended up on a very tragic note and also a suspicious note on which he was He was not ready to compromise on his own ethical standards. He went on to fight for it. It was extreme cold conditions, many other things, and also the confinement that he went through. Unfortunately, he passed away. Now, when specifically was talking about the connection between education and politics, subsequently leading to a political philosophy and also setting new standards for public life, he spoke about and said that India's education must be deeply informed by her own philosophical and cultural tradition. To this end, he introduced courses on Indian philosophy, Vedanta, Nyaya, Indian logic, Buddhist thought, and also classical Indian aesthetics. This is exactly what he did, where he thought this would create a balance or an intellectual balance and civilizational confidence that would mold character, shape moral vision, and also cultivate national pride. In a speech actually to the Hindu Mahasabha Education Council in the 1944, he said, to mold national character, our education must spring from the depths of India's culture. This is exactly what he was talking about, where he was giving practical directive for institutional reform. Because until and unless there is a practical directive, most of the other things remain like the way institutions have a vision and mission never to achieve. That's exactly what he feared, that institutions will go through at some point of time. So he brought in interdisciplinary dialogue, where something very interesting that Tagore also said when he was invited. He said that education as the flowering of personality through harmony within the world. This is what Tagore said, though he had his own resistance. He did not believe in the structured way of learning to everything, but he liked this one, talking about literature, refinement, and service as the goals of higher education, which also coincided with the thought of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee himself. Now, he also said that every child or every Indian child must have access to equality and quality education that connected them to their soil, their stories, and their sense of self. This is very important, because though as of now we feel somewhere that we are connected to the soil, but unfortunately their stories is missing. We are listening to someone else's story, we are celebrating someone else's story, and also the sense of self that he spoke about seems to be lost. Somewhere I see that's the thought of decolonizing the minds that Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee was talking about. Maybe the colonizers have left, but we are still decolonized. We are still colonized in our mindset. We still haven't come out of that one. So decolonization can happen through education itself. So debates on language, curriculum, and education policy are exemplarily important, because he argued for autonomy of universities that need value-based learning and also the centrality of culture in education. That's his thought that he was essentially trying to bring in. So he gave almost what we call as the blueprint for the cultural renaissance, sitting there with the intellectual sovereignty, intellectual integrity as well. Intellectual sovereignty doesn't mean that we do anything that we want to. It also has to go hand in hand, like the railway track, with intellectual integrity. That's also equally important. Now, coming to the visit to Pondicherry's connection, this is so important, and some of the things that perhaps Mahatma Prasad-ji is the best one, because it's all there in their archival records. Some I was able to pull out, in which some of the things he said when he made the address here on the invitation of the mother. He says, a reborn India must derive strength from her soul. That's what Aurobindo foresaw. He took refuge in Dr. Sri Aurobindo's thoughts, and he made this particular mention. He went on to say that India's political future was inseparable from its spiritual and ethical awakening. For him, nationhood was not a bureaucratic or cartographic reality, but a living consciousness. This is also something that Sri Aurobindo spent most of his life after coming to Pondicherry talking about the consciousness. His level was completely different. We can't even elevate ourselves to. Forget elevating ourselves in consciousness, we can't even elevate ourselves to the English that he has used. Perhaps even the Britishers would feel ashamed to actually read his works. That's a sort of understanding that he has. I have always felt mesmerized, the type of thought and understanding he has from some of the micro histories of Greece to micro histories of Japan. Leave aside our own. Our own knowing is something that we have to be, it's inevitable. Whereas in his case, he knew the length and breadth of the history of world, and that's a sort of personality Sri Aurobindo was, and that inspired Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee as well. So he referred to Sri Aurobindo's writings, especially on the idea of the India's destiny was not just political freedom but spiritual mission for humanity. He acknowledged that no real independence was possible unless India stood firm on its own dharmic foundation. Now that's the statement that he makes, taking or borrowing from Sri Aurobindo himself. In his speech, he also believed to have remarked at that particular point of time, saying, "Let us not imitate but rediscover. Education must awaken the latent divinity within our children, not merely equip them for professions." And this is something that perhaps aligns with the mother's idea, Sri Aurobindo's idea of what exactly they call as true education or integral education itself. Because this particular thought is also a rare confluence of ideas that shape people, though being in different places, in different times, and also imagining different things of their own India. This has been something that has been less discussed facet of his persona itself, his openness to India's spiritual heritage as a critical component of the nation building itself, and seeing Pondicherry or seeing Sri Aurobindo as some sort of a philosophical meeting point between what we call as the political realism and spiritual idealism. Now, a lot of people think that spiritual and realism or political realism cannot go hand in hand. And that's where I think India has made this progress, and India is distinct. It's not that because somebody hasn't got that we should not be having. And that's exactly the experiment that these individuals or these great sons of the soil made, where they tried bringing political realism with spiritual idealism, that you should be able to do what your land asks for. That means Shastra and Shastra should be able to go hand in hand. It's not that the way binaries are given. In the beginning, if you remember, I spoke about that he always was against binary. That means somebody in Shastra, that means in science or in education, doesn't mean that he should not be well equipped to take care of his nation. So he felt that Shastra both have to go hand in hand, which is a rarity that we don't really find when lot of people talking about. Now, simply to reflect upon in just a few minutes of what we are talking, he said that we are not merely inheriting the land of our ancestors, we are entrusted with the spirit of a civilization. This is exactly what he said. Now, this awareness had likely deepened through his interaction in Pondicherry itself. His commitment to integral nationalism, if Sri Aurobindo and the mother spoke about integral education, he also spoke about integral nationalism that was deep-rooted in what we call as the frequency in which Sri Aurobindo himself would speak about. And he made this reference to in his speech on the August 15, 1947. This is a message from Sri Aurobindo, where he spoke about and declared that India's independence was not only the first step towards greater destiny, the spiritual unification of humanity. Mookerjee found inspiration in this vision, echoing in his own assertion. He said true independence is not an event, it's a continuous awakening. So they say it's not that we celebrate on the 26th of January and 15th of August, but that's something that has to happen on a daily basis. This is exactly what we're talking about. Just to speak about in the last part of my talk, he says, we shall never sacrifice national unity at the altar of political convenience. This is something that he said. At no point of time you should ever be giving up on your very thought that just because something is politically convenient, don't change your stance on which you are civilizationally rooted, because there are only two civilizational states that are even surviving. Others have even lost their civilizational value. Perhaps it's China and India, and they anticipate that the 21st century is going to be a century of India and China. And if these two come together, perhaps that's the best thing to happen. We don't know what destiny holds for us. If you look at the relevance today in terms of trying to revive and trying to look at his ideas or ideas of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, Article 370 and Kashmir becomes inseparable because it's the most visible reflection of paying tribute to someone like Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. This is what he lived for, he died for as well. And there where we see the abrogation that we saw, or the removal of the special status to Jammu and Kashmir, and the bifurcation of the state into two union territories marked the closure of a long political chapter that began with Mookerjee's protest in 1953, perhaps that found or got resonated in the modern ideas. In terms of the national security and cultural confidence, as he spoke about, that his military preparedness and national security always went beyond the convention, and it included cultural security, demographic balance, and the civilizational awareness. This also is consistent with regard to call for our border integrity, integration of the refugee population, and also the cultural self-respect that we are talking about today. In terms of the education and curriculum, I already mentioned about the NEP and also the Indian knowledge system, which is perhaps the essence that Dr. Mookerjee was speaking about at this particular point of time. He says, to mold national character, our education must spring from the depths of the culture. This is a speech that he again gave in 1944, where he spoke about. His ideological vanguard, unlike many political figures who are remembered merely for their offices held, Mookerjee is remembered for the principles that he refused to compromise. Unlike others who just lived a legacy, kept on holding positions after positions, his is remembered for exactly the other side of the story, that what he refused for. Just to conclude, what we see Mookerjee's life is a life and a fusion of intellectual brilliance, spiritual depth and nationalistic fire. Born into privilege, he chose the path of responsibility and sacrifice, trained in English literature and law. He could have pursued a comfortable life, as I mentioned before, in academia or law, but he chose to serve the nation in the utmost, at a time when the nation was vulnerable and it was in his formative years. He was a constitutionalist who understood the power of institutions, a patriot who placed unity above all, and a visionary who saw India not as a pale imitation of the West, but as a civilizational force and its own right. Mookerjee's story is also one of forgotten memory, a story that was buried for decades by political indifference and ideological hostility. Yet, as India reclaims its civilizational identity, the contributions of Dr. Mookerjee are being rightfully restored to their place in the national memory. Thus, ultimately, if you have to look at his life and the legacy, that's a theme that I was given to speak about. The message of Syama Prasad Mookerjee is very, very clear. In times of political polarization and ideological confusion, not fusion but confusion, his legacy offers a compass, a reminder that the path of national greatness lies in courage, culture, and the conviction. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, sir. Truly, we celebrated the life and legacy of Dr. Bharat Keshari, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. And I was just, while listening to your very insightful lecture, I was thinking that when we look at texts like the Yoga Vashisht, or for example, the works of Acharya Abhinav Gupta, we always come across this one sentiment which is Sarvam Hi Sarvatmakam. That is, everything is consisting of everything. So this idea of Akhandata, this idea of integrity, I think this is the very essence of our Sanskriti.